Hi, it's Shirley Gutkowski at Primal Air. Welcome to the live. Today is May 23rd, 2022, and I am developing a little program that I think might be of interest to you, at least this little segment. I'd like some feedback on it if possible. What I've done is I have taken some slides from a program that I saw online with Dr. Kenobi, and he is talking about the advent of seed oils as being problematic for our health in general across the planet, or at least in the United States. And he has come up with a couple of timelines here that I thought were super interesting. And then I started to mess around with the timeline and bring up some other things that had been happening. So what he had pointed out is that seed oils have really evolved into these chronic illnesses that we've seen, where weight gain and neurological disorders like multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, all of those kinds of things are really kind of increasing because we have more seed oils in our diet. What is a seed oil compared to what is a fruit oil is also a very interesting topic. So seed oils would be canola oil, soybean oil, corn oil, all of those kinds of things. And those are the problematic oils. They are interfering with our cell walls, and that's causing us to not be able to do a bunch of things, including function at a very high level. Fruit oils, on the other hand, included some saturated fats that have been not only health promoting, but health repairing. So things like coconut oil, olive oil, avocado oil are all oils that come from fruits. We mostly think of fruits as not having any oil, but if you've ever squeezed any of these, I think you'll know that it's really common to feel that oily kind of a sensation, and those oils are very effective at healing the cells in your body that have been damaged by the seed oils. So Dr. Peldiak and I have been on this little mission about sugar and really redefining sugar into what can be healthful and how to replace sugars using sugar alcohols like xylitol and erythritol. And as we were talking about all of this, we were thinking about this Bale-Donine method, where Doctors Bale and Donine have been at the AASH meetings showing this diagram. And what their point of view is that all of these things at the roots here are causing inflammation in the body. And once that inflammation takes hold, the inflammation is what's driving cardiovascular disease. And all of those things are true, but you have to ask why until you can't ask why anymore. So we, Dr. Peldiak and I, were asking, well, why is this? And what we decided was that maybe this could be an example where sugar and seed oils are adding fertilizer onto these things down here at the bottom. And then I got to thinking about this extremely captivating video on Pottinger's cats. You've heard me talk about this a million times, I'm sure. I'm just going to leave it at that. Pottinger's cats. You can find the summary video on YouTube if you want. And so we have another little thing to kind of look at here, and that is overlaying Pottinger's cat's findings across the human generations and what's been going on. So for instance, this was the healthy cats. their skull came into 3 pieces once they got rid of all the distracting pieces. And the first generation looked like this, where there was very little bone density and there was very little fusion of a lot of the bones. And so we ended up with this kind of configuration. And then after the 3rd and 4th generations, it was just a crapshoot. So I overlaid this onto a regular timeline for us, and this is what I came up with. Those people that were born before World War II, sometimes the transitions generation, the silent generation, I don't know, it's just a bunch of different names for those groups. Sugar industry was first organized. So they organized in the middle 1940s. And this is when things started to really turn. If you've been following not Dr. Teichholz, Nina Teichholz, who's an author, science journalist, Gary Taubes, and a bunch of other people, you've been following this sugar industry shenanigans that has really started to damage our health. The baby boomers were the first generation introduced to TV dinners and these highly processed foods, Salisbury steaks. We started to see increases in type 2 diabetes. Obesity was at about 13% of the population, and this is about the time when grain was introduced as a first food for children. So there was maybe a little bit up in a generation before us, but for sure everybody was eating rice cereal by the time the baby boomers were being introduced to foods. Then now we have Generation X, and that is the generation that was born into the middle 80s or so, into the 90s. And this is where not the square meals, right? The 4 squares. We had switched to a food pyramid that wanted us to eat a very, very improved number of grains, where the grain recommendation was much, much higher than ever before. I always wonder about the pill too. So I wonder what happened with the early people on the pill, and that's going to be explored later, I think. I'm just throwing it in there as a piece of the puzzle potentially. This is the 2nd generation that was mainly formula fed. 21% of human fat was plant fat in this generation. Folic acid supplements began as opposed to folate, and obesity in this one generation went up from 13% to 30%, and 3% of all adults had diabetes as this Generation X was coming up to adulthood. And more importantly, we're seeing these autism and Alzheimer's numbers starting to change quite a bit, starting with this group. Life expectancy started to go down in Generation Y and Z, and especially now with these Alpha generation. Lifetime earnings have also been decreasing. They can't seem to make as much money as their parents and grandparents. They are the 3rd and 4th generations on this grains as a first food. Fertility rates have been plummeting. This is also the 2nd generation on fat-free diet. And we see a change, a very huge change in the diagnosis of autism and number of Alzheimer's deaths. So the number of those diagnosed with autism, this change, I think, has a lot to do with our diet, like a lot. And this change here in the Alzheimer's disease deaths, that can go either way, because a lot of these people, we're seeing more and more people at end of life now because of the baby boomers are all in their 70s now. So we're starting to see, I don't know what part that plays, but this is an increase that's over and above what you would expect, I think. So these are the things that I really wanted to talk about today and just pique your interest. At Primal Air, we like to look at things from an evolutionary lens and really try to bring awareness to the changes of diet and what we have to change right now with respect to diet than we did in the past. So what we have to do now is we have to change up everything that we thought we knew so that we can change the epigenetics, and that takes a number of generations. In the Pottinger cat study, it took him 4 generations of cats with a cleaner species-specific diet that brought them all back to health. So there's hope. There's absolutely hope, but we have to kind of get going. In the meantime, you may need some help. If you were born with a small maxilla, or your tongue was tied, or any one of these kind of situations that deal with the craniofacial respiratory complex, or what we've been commonly calling the snoring complex, you can see that it's that you do need to have some help right now. You know, your change in diet is not going to grow your face. It may grow your grandchildren's faces, but for right now, you may need some extra help. So at Primal Air, we have a number of therapists with a number of passions to help you out through this time of change. So you can give us a call or go to our website at primalair.com. Thank you for listening. I don't know how long this went, but I hope it was short enough to keep your attention. Have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you soon.